The President, please be seated. The court is now back in session. Now we would like to hand over to counsel for Mr. Kyu Sampon to continue putting questions to this witness.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, President. Madam Witness, just before we broke for the afternoon pause, you testified that during the second study session you attended, which you now state as having been chaired by Mr. Kyu Sampon, there was discussion of treason and people from the North Zone. I wish to read back to you a passage from your written record of witness interview of the 5th of March 2008, A3/474, French yarn 0020 50 54, Khmer 0017 20 60 to 65, and English 0020 50 49 to 50. And you state two things. Firstly, you stated that the first study session that took place in Boré-Kéla in 1977 was chaired by Mr. Kyu Sampon. And further on the same page, you stated that Mr. Nunchia also led a study session in Boré-Kéla in 1978. And further on, you stated that he talked about the North Zone group's treason and not letting workers join in the treason. Is what you testified this morning consistent with what you told the tribunal's investigators on the 5th of March 2008? And I would therefore ask you to explain whether or not it is consistent.
Response. Good afternoon again, Mr. President and Your Honors. These questions are rather confusing, and I may be confused myself because it happened a very long time ago. Indeed, the first session was a different one as opposed to the second session. And again, during the first session, topic regarding traitors or treason was not discussed. It was only discussed in the second session.
Ça, Madame.
Yes, Madame, you have not altered your response on that point. But what is of interest to me is whether or not, and please tell me if you are able to recall or not, because it might be difficult 40 years after the fact, who led the first study session and who chaired the second study session?
Yeah.
Response. Mr. Nguyen Jie was chairing the first session, and Mr. Kyu Sampon was chairing the second session in 1978.
Alors, Madame.
Madame, you've just testified that the facts occurred very long ago, That is very difficult to recall some 40 years on, but 4 years ago, you stated something else. You stated something entirely different from what you were saying today. 4 years ago, you said that the first study session was chaired by Mr. Kyo Song-pon and the second study session was led by Mr. Nunchea. Is it possible that you are mistaken today when you are making as firm a statement as you have before the trial chamber? Do you have any doubts or uncertainty over your own testimony?
Response. The study sessions were there. I perhaps have problem recognizing who would be chairing a particular session, although I am sure that it was Nunchea who was chairing the first session and that Kyo Sampon was the one who chaired the second session.
Ce matin, lorsque
This morning, in response to a question put to you by the co-prosecutor, you began by discussing the study session chaired by Mr. Kyo Song-pon. You said that Kyo Song-pon told all those present that people had to unite because the war had just ended. Is the testimony that you provided this morning referring to an event that would have been presided over by Mr. Kyo Song-pon closer to the date of 1975 rather than a session that was chaired by Mr. Nunchea?
The President, Madam Witness, could you please hold on and counsel for the civil parties? You may now proceed.
Mr. President, I find my colleague's manner in which he's asking the question is highly leading. He is trying to direct her to what she said this morning, or what she could have said. I believe that this manner of questioning is improper and cannot continue. If I may continue, Mr. President, as Counsel Verken, I wish to reply to my learned colleague that this morning the co-prosecutor reread the statement given by this witness on the 5th of March 2008. He read out a passage, and she stated that the first session was presided over by Mr. Kyo Song-pon in 1976, and that the second study session was presided over by Mr. Nunchea in 1978. And during my questioning, it would appear that things occurred in reverse order. Therefore, I'm seeking to know what happened and to clarify the witness's testimony. And in doing so, I am compelled to ask questions concerning the dates only. For example, when the meeting presided over by Mr. Kyo Song-pon would have occurred just before the victory of 1975. By specifying that the meeting headed by Mr. Kyo Song-pon took place sometime very close to the 1975 victory.
The President. The Chamber has already heard the line of questioning, including the several questions Council already asked the witness. We have heard enough, and Council, you may proceed to other questions, please.
J'en prends note, Monsieur le Président.
Very well, Mr. President. I've taken note. I shall proceed to another line of questioning. This morning, Madam Witness, in response to a question put by the co-prosecutor, you stated that you did not attend any study sessions led by Pong. Do you recall testifying that this morning?
Response. Which part of the morning testimony you would like me to recollect, please?
Alors écoutez, moi,
I'm unable to give you the exact hour, but it is on page 16 of my notes that goes to the end of page 18. And near the end of your testimony to the final questions that were put to you. And what I have handwritten here is that you stated that I did not attend any study sessions presided over by Peng, only those presided over by Nunchia and Mr. Kyo Sampon. But Madame, you are free to say anything else. You can state whether or not you did attend any study sessions presided over by Peng. Is that the case?
Response. No, I had never attended any study sessions chaired by Peng.
alors,
On the 6th of July 2003, you met with Mr. Longdani from DC CAM. Mr. Longdani conducted an interview with you. And on page 7 of your interview, as transcribed in the French ERN 007, 9529-6, in English 0066-20-15, and in Khmer 000-19-582. You state as follows. In July 2003, question from DC CAM. There was Kyo Sampon and Nunchia, but were there any other individuals? Answer. There was Mr. Peng from Office 870. Question. So Mr. Peng from Office 870. Answer. Yes. Question. So he taught there as well? Answer. Yes. Question. What kind of study sessions did he lead exactly? Answer. He taught about communist struggle, and there were other topics, but I do not recall them. Madame, based on those answers, it would appear that in 2003 you clearly remembered that you did indeed attend a study session led by Mr. Peng, and you even recalled the subject matter of those sessions. How do you explain the fact that today you no longer remember? Could you please tell the chamber?
Response. I respond to parts that I still remember, and I would not respond to other parts that I don't remember. So these things happened a very long time ago. It is no doubt that I may forget.
This morning, the co-prosecutor asked you how long the study session you attended and presided by Mr. Kyu Sompong lasted. You answered 1 day. Now, just following the passage that I have just read aloud, I'm referring to the same interview with DC Cam on the 6th of July 2003. You state, and I quote, Danny from DC Cam asks you, all of those people, Nunchia, Kyu Sompong, they gave courses for how long each time? Answer, well, each time they taught for 1 week. End of quote. My question for you, Madame, is the same. Can you please comment on the difference, the difference between the duration of the study sessions presided over by the individuals named? There seems to be a difference of 6 times.
Response. During the study sessions, people had to study there for a week. Well, to put it this way, the session would last, the actual study session would last for like 1 morning, but then people had to come back to work. Then we go back to the session.
Ça veut dire qu'ils retournaient.
That means they would return to the study session the next day, and the same person presiding would take the floor.
Response. No, there would be no more new teachers or trainers, because after that morning session we would break into groups, and then we discussed and criticized one another and placed ourselves for criticism. For example, we would raise our advantages, disadvantages, bad and good points, so that everyone could do the same during such discussion, and no more teachers.
Mais le lendemain, il y avait...
But the next day, there would be a teacher or an instructor.
Response. No.
Et donc les sessions...
So the study sessions that you stated you attended lasted 1 day or 1 week?
Response. As I said, the study session lasted for only 1 day. But after the session, we had to engage in the self-criticism session for the whole week. For example, each day we would convene to place ourselves for criticism. Then we went back to work and we did the same the following day.
Et c'était
And the entire year unfolded in such a manner?
Response. That happened only once in a year. It was called the live view session, when people had to criticize the others and to be criticized.
Est-ce que vous vous souvenez,
Madame, do you recall exactly how many times Mr. Kyo Sampon came to visit your factory?
Response. He went there on 2 or 3 occasions only.
ce matin, vous...
This morning, you stated he came 3 or 4 times, and now you're saying 2 or 3 times. In your mind, you do not have a very clear idea of exactly how many times he attended. It could be 2 or 3, but it would appear that you can't say more. Is this correct?
Response. I think you may be right, because something that happened a very long time ago, and I was young at that time, and now I am getting older, and my memory is also not as very good as it used to be. So I can't remember things precisely as it happened immediately.
Et donc,
Therefore, in the logic of what you have just said, Madame, it is possible that you could have better recalled the chronology of events had you been heard 4 years, when you were heard 4 years ago, as opposed to what you are testifying today. Is this correct?
Response. What I am saying is that it is difficult to remember things that happened a very long time ago. Things that happened recently we may remember better than things that happened a very long time ago.
donc nous sommes d'accord finalement.
Then ultimately we are in agreement.
Response. Agree on what, please?
Vous êtes méfiant.
We are in agreement on the fact that you may have recalled events a bit more clearly in 2008. than you are able to recall today?
Response. Yes, my memory back then was clear, and now I think my memory is not as that good because I am getting very old and I can't even read the writings properly these days.
Je vous remercie, madame.
Thank you very much, Madam Witness. I've concluded my questioning, Mr. President.
The President, Mr. Co-Prosecutor, you may now proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Given, I think, problems that both myself and Mr. Malone from Mr. Koppe were having about Koi Tun and Koi Kun earlier in the testimony, can I just say, for the record and for Malone Friend, that in the confession of Koi Tun, which is 5.39, there are a number of pages where there's the dates and the name Kun on Koi Tun's confession. Thank you.
The President, thank you. Madam Ag Hain, your testimony has now come to an end. You are now excused. The court is very grateful to your time and attendance. We appreciate your patience for the whole day. Your testimony helps ascertain the truth. We would like to wish you all the very best and safe travels. Court officer is now directed to assist with the vessel unit to ensure that Madam Ag Hain is returned home safe and sound. And next, the chamber would like to continue hearing the testimony of TCW 689.
Court officer, could you invite the reserve witness into the courtroom? President, good afternoon, Mr. Witness. What is your name? Witness. Good afternoon, Mr. President. My name is Sum Alat. Question: How old are you, Mr. Som Alat? Answer: This year I am 60 years old. Question: Where is your current address? Answer: My current address is at Kanchư Bai Daj village, Will commune, Kondiang district, Pulsat province. Question: What is your current occupation and the names of your parents? Answer: I worked at the Provincial Department of Culture and Fine Arts, but I am now retired. My father's name is Sum Sung, and my mother is Long Eung. They're both deceased. What is your wife's name and how many children do you have together? Answer: My wife is Lee Kun Thia and we have 7 children. Thank you, Mr. Som Alat. As reported by the greffier, to your best knowledge, you have no relationship by blood or by law to any of the civil parties recognized in this case, nor to any of the 2 accused, that is Nuon Chi and Keo Sampon, and that you already took an oath. This morning, is this information accurate? Answer: That is accurate. President, thank you. We would like now to inform you of your right and obligation as a witness before this chamber. Mr. Som Alat, as a witness before this court's proceedings, you have the right to refuse to respond to any question or seek your comments that would incriminate you. That is your right against self-incrimination. And as for your obligation, you must respond to all the questions put to you by any of the parties or by the bench, except in the case that you think your comment or response may incriminate you. And as a witness, you must tell the truth that you have heard, have experienced, recalled, or observed directly regarding the event that is put to you in the questions by any of the parties or the bench. Mr. Alat, have you been interviewed by the investigators of the Office of the Co-Investigating Judges in the last few years? Answer: The investigators came to the province and I gave them the information as stated in the written record of the interview. Question: How many times were you interviewed and where did it take place? Answer: It was conducted in 2008 in the office of the Department of Culture and Fine Arts in Pulsat province. Thank you. And before your appearance before this court, have you read, reviewed, or have it read? That is the written record of the interview that you gave to the investigator of the Office of the Co-Investigating Judges that you said was held at the office of the Provincial Department of Culture and Fine Arts in 2008 in order to refresh your memory? Answer: Before I appear before this court, I received instruction from my counsel that I should refresh my memory by reading that record of interview. Question: can you tell us whether the written record of your interview that you have read, in order to refresh your memory, is consistent with your responses you gave to the investigator in 2008? Answer: yes, it is consistent. Thank you. And Mr. Sum Alat, you will be questioned by the party, so put aside that written record of your interview. And for the hearing of this witness testimony, the floor is given to the prosecution first. You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon, Your Honours. Good afternoon, Counsel. And good afternoon, Mr. Sum. Mr. Sum, my name is William Smith, and I appear with Hut Veng, and we appear for the prosecution. And our role is to ask you questions to ascertain the truth of what happened in Democratic Kampuchea, and particularly in relation to the Pasat province. And we hope you can assist us with that. This afternoon, I'll ask you some preliminary questions in relation to your family background, your professional background, and also in relation to what you did before 1975 and the role that you played during the conflict between the Lon Nol forces and the revolutionary forces in Democratic Kampuchea. And then tomorrow we'll continue on discussing issues that you mentioned in the statement in relation to the surrender of the Lon Nol forces, meetings that were had, events that related to Tulpol Tray, and some other issues. So if we can start, you stated that you have 7 children. Can you tell the court how many of those children were born, if any, during the Democratic Kampuchea period between 1975 and 1979?
I have 7 children. The eldest one was not born during the Democratic Cambodia period, but my wife was pregnant during the Democratic Cambodia period, and the child was delivered after the liberation. And as for the other 6 children, they were born after.
Thank you. And you mentioned that your parents have died. Did they die during that period, or did they die after 1979?
My father died since I was a child. He died at the age of 45, and I was 9 years old back then. My mother passed away after the Khmer Rouge regime.
Thank you. And you mentioned that you had a job as the first Deputy Director of the Provincial Department of Culture and Fine Arts in Pasat. When did you retire from that job?
retired from that office for 1 year now.
And from your statement, I believe you took on that position in 1986. Is that correct?
I took office in 1986.
And so you've been in that job for quite a while, from my calculation, 27 years. Can you tell the court what the nature of that work is, what the purpose of the Department of Culture and Fine Arts is in PASAT, and your role in helping it fulfill that purpose?
Before 1979, I worked at the Ministry of Education in its office in Busan, but in 1986 I transferred to work in the Office of Culture and Fine Arts. In my position as the Deputy Director in charge of the performance and arts, and also in relation to films and to performance.
And does that department have any role in preserving history, Cambodian history, particularly during the Democratic Kampuchea period, or at any other time?
The main role of the Department of Culture is to preserve everything which is the national culture.
Thank you. And I have a few questions now in relation to something you said in your statement to the ECC investigators. And if I can refer you to the following statement at E002 42128, that's the English version, Khmer 0019 6814, and French 0027 4134. In that statement, there's a passage where you refer to your role in collecting evidence of crimes that occurred in the PASAT region. And if I quote, you were asked, after 1979, what did you do in relation to the security office and killing sites? You answered, in early 1980, I attended the education meeting in Phnom Penh. In that meeting, they asked 5 representatives from each province to give a presentation on how to gather evidence of Khmer Rouge mass killings and indirect murder. The collection of testimony and story was to produce as evidential documents for educational publication. These documents were maintained at Tuol Sleng and the Ministry of Education. And I do not have any of these documents with me now. That's what you told the investigators, and I've got some questions about that. Did you volunteer to attend that education meeting in Phnom Penh, or were you selected?
Allow me to expand on this point regarding the nature of our work at the Education Office. In Busan province, after the 7th January liberation, the Education Office, or as well as other institutions, needs to be organized. And we, the group of 5, were the head in the arrangement for the education, and we were selected to attend the education meeting in Phnom Penh. In that education session, they compiled the documents, and as I said, I was one of the 5 representatives from Pusat province, and we made the presentation of those documents as we gathered, and yes, what you read is correct.
To be clear, was this meeting to present evidence of the mass killings and indirect murder, or was it to discuss and determine how that evidence would be collected? In other words, had you collected the evidence already and presented it, or was that to happen after the meeting?
After the conference, we explained to them the number of those who were killed in Pusat, and we also presented the killing sites.
Thank you. You mentioned that this meeting occurred in early 1980, so that was about a year after the Khmer Rouge fell from power. What were you involved in collecting the evidence and the information of what happened in Pusat in that year? Can you tell us what was the nature of your involvement in collecting that information, or whether or not that information was given to you to present?
In the conference, all representatives from all the provinces participated and made their presentation in their respective province. And then the education department had the role to compile all those information, and a book was subsequently published in 1980 or 81. It presents the crime of genocide in that book, and I am one of the 5 people representing my province.
And did you yourself, were you involved in the collection of that information before the meeting, or was it given to you by someone else?
In the conference, representatives from each province provided the information through the conference itself.
Thank you. And how long did it take to collect that information from Pusat province?
We spent one day to discuss amongst ourselves. There is 5 of us representing the province during that conference. Because we were from different districts, and then we combined the information from those various districts to represent a Pusat province, and that was part of the book compilation.
And did you agree with the other representatives before the meeting that you would collect information from your district?
We discussed amongst ourselves, and we agreed on the information that we were to present.
And I'm going to finish this topic now, but how did you yourself get that information from the district that you were responsible for? How did you get that information? Was it through talking with other people, through interviews? How did you get that?
The information collection was as follows. First, we give information from the five of us to one another. Second, based on our eyewitness, and then we discuss among ourselves and agreed on the final information.
And thank you. And just so it's clear, you mentioned a number of districts in your statement of Pasat province. Can you just assist the court by reminding us what districts there are and what are the names and how many districts are there in Pasat province?
In early 1979, Pasat province composed of Konding district, Bakan district, Kroko district, Phnom Krawang district, and the provincial town itself. So there were 5 districts, and that was the structure in 1979. Later on, Long Veng district was created.
Thank you. And is it fair to say that you've lived in the Pasat province for the whole of your life, up until now?
In fact, I was born right in Pasat province. And I have lived through my 60 years period until now I'm in.
And are you familiar with the geography of the towns and the villages and the significant landmarks in that province?
Landmarks in the province are well known and I know them.
Thank you. And last question on this topic. Why were you selected to be a representative of Pasat province at this meeting that was gathering evidence?
Please repeat your question.
You mentioned that 5 representatives were selected from each province to present the information of the mass killings during the Democratic Kampuchea period. Why were you selected from Pasat?
On this point, the education department organized a conference and representatives from all provinces were selected. At that time, traveling was difficult due to the bad structures of the road. So 5 of us were selected as representatives. We were teachers and educated people, and we came to Phnom Penh to make a presentation in the conference, we were kind of the first-hand witnesses of the crimes that happened in our province.
And perhaps to finish, you mentioned that you were teachers and educated people. Can you tell the court your education? Did you go to high school? Did you go to any further education after high school?
After I left the education department and stopped being a teacher, I actually went for training for culture and fine arts in the former Soviet Union for several months.
Thank you. Mr. President, I've finished that topic, and I'd now like to start to talk about this witness's role between 1970 and 75. I can continue. I'm in your hands.
President, the time is appropriate for an adjournment. And before we adjourn, we want to get some information from the parties so that we can prepare our hearing schedule for next week. We would like to ask the Kyusampong's defense whether they use half-a-day time allocation to make comments or to respond to the key documents presented by the prosecution and the lead co-lawyers for civil parties. That is for next week, I mean. This is directed to Kyusampong's defense.
I have to consult with the rest of my team before I give you an answer, Mr. President. I'm afraid I can't tell you off the top of my head. I hope it could wait until tomorrow morning.
Thank you. Please give the information to the chamber as soon as possible so that we can prepare the schedule for next week's hearing and to use the time wisely. Today's proceeding has come to an adjournment. We will adjourn now and resume tomorrow, that is Thursday, the 4th of July 2013. And tomorrow we will continue to hear the testimony of the witness Sum Lat, who will once again be questioned by the relevant parties. This information is for the parties, the support staff, and the general public. Mr. Sum Lat, the hearing of your testimony has not yet concluded, and you are invited to return tomorrow to continue giving your testimony, and it will commence at 9 a.m. Court officer, in collaboration with Visu, please make the arrangement for the witness Sum Lat to return to his residence and have him return to the courtroom tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Likewise, the Duty Council, you are invited to return tomorrow morning as well. Security guards, you are instructed to take the two accused, there is Noon Chi and Kyusampong, through the detention facility and have them return to the courtroom tomorrow morning before 9 a.m. And as for Noon Chi, bring him to the holding cell downstairs, which is equipped with audio-visual communication for him to remotely follow the proceeding. The court is now adjourned.
សូមក្រោកឈរ